So this is too noisy. Now, welcome in the last Airhacks TV 2024. This is the 129th Airhacks TV. And we have lots of questions today, which is actually perfect. And we have one from Kenya. Joao Lopez, Joao, I guess. Lopez is from Portugal. And Zoltan, I think, from Hungary, as I remember. And first, what I recognized, someone asked me about Kubernetes costs. And what I forgot the last time, that the Kubernetes has to run within VPC. So what I showed you the last time was only the control plane of Kubernetes. And what I forgot is we will need at least a network address translation gateway. And I would say usually 3 in Frankfurt. There are 3 availability zones. And data process per NAT gateways is hard to tell how, but you already see we have 113 euros plus the backplane of Kubernetes. So we have 200 euros per Kubernetes cluster without worker nodes. So the last time I was too cheap for Kubernetes. And I don't know, 100 gig or hard to tell, right? How many gigabytes are processed. But we have to process that. And what you are also paying for in Kubernetes is the traffic between availability zones. And so this basically it. And also you have to pay for public IP addresses, number in use, I think at least 6, right? Of idle. And this is 43 euros for IP addresses, and yeah, which these are costs which we usually won't get in serverless, because if you are running if you are visible in internet, you don't need a VPC at all. Okay, so this was the correction from last time, and what I also should add is now the Kubernetes. So let's add that, and this is Kubernetes or Fargate k8s, exactly. k8s, number of clusters, and you can see this is 70 euros. So save and add service. So where is the summary? 73, but we lost the other one. So there was 73 euros for the Kubernetes control plane plus roughly 140 euros for the VPC, or 200 euros fixed cost per month per cluster. And what you also, of course, need is the worker nodes. So yeah. Now it's corrected. Okay, next one. Next one is here. Yeah. The reason why we are so late is because last week I was at re:Invent in Las Vegas. This is like AWS conference, so I had to attend. And what are the news? It's actually with Matt Garman is actually, I think the keynote was more technical than last year, and of course interesting chips. So it reminds me a little bit Sun Microsystems hardware back then. So there are new Trainium chips, and yeah, for Java, from my perspective, looks actually good, looks great. So and what I also did, I had the chance to talk with the Claude guys. This is the Anthropic, and showed them a little bit of Java code. They were surprised how lean it is. They said, okay, wow, we didn't knew that it's actually that simple. And yeah. Were interesting conversations. Huge conference with like 60,000 attendees in 3 hotels. I think at least 3 hotels, and they are far apart. It's like you need at least 40 minutes between the hotels. So lots of contents. So I learned a lot. It was good experience, and this is why this event here, this live stream, was delayed. Yeah, and Next topic is Mr. Glöckl. This is a friend of the show. Built an application with web components, and now ask me, okay, which technique I suggest for native mobile client. and web components are already used. So I would suggest first, if you already have web components, use Service Worker, and you could actually deploy the entire web application as a native-like client. So this would be my first choice because there is nothing to do. You can have service workers with cache, and you could load actually the entire application from cache. This would be the first choice. But let's say you cannot do this for unknown reasons. So you cannot use service workers in the application. So what you can do then? So I forgot actually to look it up, but there is JavaFX. If you search for Gluon, JavaFX Gluon, this is their main a small company. Small is not that small, and they care actually about JavaFX. So if you are working with Java developers, they will actually like, of course, Java and JavaFX. And JavaFX is you can build native applications and deploy them to App Store. And the interesting part is the Gluon company. This is Johann Voss behind, and they can support you, and they can also expose sensors from the device directly to you. They also support a web view. So JavaFX in a Java project is an interesting option for mobile clients because you can ship the JavaFX application as mobile client. This would be a second choice if you are working with Java developers. Okay, if the Java developers don't like JavaFX, or you cannot use JavaFX, then what I will do is I would use Swift and Swift UI. This is the name, not Swift plain, rather than Swift UI, which is an MVC framework, declarative one, similar to JavaFX, or Android. And in Android, there is a similar framework to Swift UI, and I forgot the name. It's actually a cool name. Swift UI versus Android. Forgot the name. Jetpack Compose. Exactly. So my second choice or third choice would be Jetpack Compose on Android and Swift UI. So why? Because this would mean you get pixel perfect best experience on both platforms, and developers will also love it. So Flutter would be my last choice because it is an abstraction and it takes, I don't know, a long time to install. It's like it downloads gigabyte of data. And this is Flutter would be my last choice. Of course, there are developers who love Flutter, and they will always prefer Flutter. But and I wouldn't use Kotlin except Kotlin native maybe. But Kotlin, this would be my very, very last choice. Okay. So what it means is web components first, because there is nothing else to do except using service workers. So you have you can install the web components this SPA, single page or progressive web app. I think on Windows even work in the App Store, and then so the second choice is JavaFX in the Java project, then Android in Jetpack or Swift UI. And Flutter would be last. Okay, let's see. Okay, your name is Zakaria. Zakaria asked me that I think what you would like to have is like summary, right? Executive summary, what's going on with Java and LLMs. So, okay, first, the podcast is just fun. There is no strategy. I just invite people, and for instance, the last time was about Drools with Mario Fusco, and we had also about DevUI with Quarkus. So, but there was also a series about LLM-related stuff. So, what's the state of the union first? So, as you may know, I use mostly Quarkus microprofile in my project. So from this angle, it looks great. So what you can do is you can very easily consume with Java existing LLMs. It means LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude. So it fits on one page. One slide, the entire code. to talk with them is basically REST with JSON. So this works out of the box. And with microprofile REST client or even HTTP Java client, it is very easy to do. Now, this is what you're gonna ask for. So what if I don't like to use the models directly? So surprisingly, Java is very good with local offline models, LLMs. And there is some work, and you're already mentioning this. This is the Llama 3 Java, which I also recorded some screencasts. And there is the Llama model. And there is a Vector API and JVector, and both had nothing to do with each other. So Vector API and JVector are completely different APIs, products, whatever. So with the Vector API, what Java can do, you can have parallel operations, in one CPU tick, or how to call it. So you can improve the sum calculation order of magnitude. They are faster than SIMD operations. This is called. And this is available in Java 21 as preview. And this is what all the LLM frameworks are using. So what you can do with Vector API, or what they are doing, is they are implementing matrix calculations with Vector API, which makes Java really, really fast. Now, JVector is the implementation of an embedded store, and not embedding store, of a vector database, not embedding store. You can call vector database embedding store, but I think the proper name is a vector database. And and JLlama and Llama 3 Java are both competing products in Java. And what they are doing, they are able to run Llama-like models, and there are lots of them. Llama 3, Mistral. These models can be downloaded and loaded into a memory and executed. So a funny fact is, or interesting fact is that Llama 3 Java is able to run the model without any compilation. So it means you can run Java without Java-C, and you get the model inference locally. The same is true Llama Java, Llama J. JLlama, this is the name, JLlama is the name. With JLlama, you get similar capability, but it is more professional Maven-like tool, and it even downloads the model for you. Okay, and Tornado VM can accelerate. So with Tornado VM, the Java inference becomes faster because it can run on GPU in addition to SIMD. And already the Java is as fast, or sometimes even faster than C code. Okay. So and by the way, next week there is a workshop, entire day about exactly that. This what I will start with is neural network works, and we'll try to, and then the next step would be Vector API, and I plan to do some local model inference, and then, if time allows, also LangGraph4J, and this time without clouds. So a little bit clouds, but not that much. Okay. So this was, I hope, summary. And now the next one. And hopefully I'm still online. So can you hear me? Because the chat is very quiet, which is suspicious. Okay, now Georgie did something which is incredible. So he found 2 videos. And so let's see whether it will work. So I actually wanted as a preparation to do that. And this Steve Jobs, by the way. I watched actually the entire thing. Watch this. So we have Corba here, and Synergy, of course, Dole, no, this one, then briefly the other one. Then let's see this one. This is the in one, it mentions Java actually. This is the interesting part, and it's this is the other one exactly. And towards the end, it says, okay, everything is going to be Java. Here, you see this? So on what Steve Jobs says here is the next version, and this is next step. It was before Apple. Steve Jobs says the next version of web objects is going to be Java for compiled language and JavaScript as a script language, which is interesting. So, and Josi asked me about my opinion about that. So let's go here. So, and now Mr. Georgie, not Josi, asked me. Okay, so what's about that? So first, I didn't knew that at next step, the next step is already that far. And the interesting part during both, by the way, thank you for the videos. They were really interesting. So I watched both. And what I didn't knew is that OpenStep was developed by Nextstep and Sun Microsystems at the same time. So it is very likely that Mr. Steve Jobs actually influenced the direction of, or maybe, yeah, a little bit, the direction of Java, because Corba 2 was already mentioned in the video, and this video was from 1996, I think. No, 95, this one, and this was parallel to Java. So I'm pretty sure that OpenStep, this was like the next step, OpenStep was influenced Java. And the web objects was a framework on a server, and it was really enterprisey actually. If you watch that, and by the way, if you have time, watch the videos because the technology is incredible actually. So if you take a look what they did in 1996, they were basically JSPs back then, and it was what Mr. Jobs did. Steve Jobs did back then is booked flight from San Francisco to Chicago. And it worked, right? Or maybe it was a fake, but the websites worked with Netscape back then. So so what was my experience back then? So I started with Java in 1995, but I didn't knew about that. So this was actually at the same time. 1997 had first commercial projects. But I was year 2000 at the Java 1 conference, and Steve Jobs delivered a keynote together with Scott McNealy. And what Steve Jobs said back then is that Java is going to be future on Mac. So this is like the preferred language. What also interesting is now at the Java 1 conference, they reduced the price, this is what I remember, of the web objects from $10K to $500 back then. So this is why it I can remember. And now, a few days later, I was in projects and web object was also mentioned in the project. And what I remember, this is the Apache Cayenne. And Apache Cayenne is similar or based on web objects. And what surprised me, it is not deprecated, it is still alive. And this is like object modeler. And we actually almost use that in a project. So maybe we should give it a try because it looks actually interesting, and the project is also somehow active on GitHub. So so Cayenne, as you can see, it is still active, and it is based on web objects. And by the way, I think Apple is still using web objects internally. At least Apple used web objects for iTunes and iTunes on App Store, I think. But internally, and this web object is no more available since 2009, to my knowledge. And okay, now there is another project Project Wonder. And what this is the continuity of web objects. So if you're interested, you can take a look on this. What it is, this is like the web objects from back then, you see. And this is open source edition of it. So if you have time and you would like to see, how it works, you can take a look at that. It's always interesting, to learn from the past. So that's basically it, right? So it seems like Mr. Jobs actually influenced enterprise Java. Georgie, you are right. I hope I pronounce your name Georgie. Yeah, I hope it is the right pronunciation. And the web objects was maybe the first Java enterprise server developed by NextStep, and then was used heavily at Apple. And yeah, so you can see, Java is actually pretty cool. It's used even, I think there are still projects at Apple which use enterprise Java, not the Java E version, rather than web objects. Okay, I hope we covered that. Now, Mr. You are the guy who asks the questions, the great questions. So, first, Huao, very good questions. Thank you for that. So, first question is, if I wanted to use repository pattern, where should I use a repository class? First, I don't like the repository pattern. And the reason being is, my idea is, so I don't know why repository is needed. At the beginning of Java, there was a DAO pattern, data access object. And the data access object, the purpose was to decouple from the storage. And this is already done by the JPA entity manager, or by Panache, or whatever, or by Cayenne, right? So the repository is not needed. So, and if you access the database, you have to write SQL statements. But if you access an external service, you have to write REST requests. And if you access, S3, then you have to also write HTTP requests and DynamoDB as well. And if you access, Cassandra database, then you use the Cassandra driver. But for me, it is not difference between accessing a database and accessing an external server. So what I don't understand is why we use repository pattern to access the database, but we're not using repository pattern to access an external microservice, for instance, right? So this is the question, why there's a difference between both. And but if you really like to have repository pattern, put it in control package. It is an entity is a little bit strange, so I put it in control package, but I don't name repositories. Repositories is just regular Java class, or sometimes even an interface. And the interface is called, or the Java is just called what they are doing, not what the name is. So, and decouple logic is to okay, exactly. But you are saying how decouple logic to get the entity itself from the data. The question is why disadvantage? Why we would like to decouple the logic from the entity? It could be advantage or disadvantage. So I would say first, what happens if we don't decouple? So how it harm? What can happen in worst case? So this is the interesting part. So REST clients, similar thing. So REST client for me, no difference whether I access local logic or remote one. And in REST client, I will also put the REST clients into control package. Yeah, this is basically it. So Mr. Naze Naderi asked me, did you see Para project or other bus or open source project is a good business plan to create? What do you mean by that? What is BAS? What is B? What could be B? B as a service, maybe. So worst case, the data object could be too big. This is true, but then you can split the entities. And with Java records, for instance, they are pretty small. What I also using more and more is using just a JSON object instead of an entity sometimes, if you really would need to be flexible. Yeah. A backend as a service. You mean like how it's called, Firestore, or what it's called, Firebase, right, from Google? Or what do you mean backend as a service? I mean, I know front-end for backends, but backend as a service, what do you like to have? Is it like a payment service, or what is a backend as a service? Bars. So what is backend as a service? Okay. I didn't know that this is a thing, but what we experimented with, maybe I could call it a backend as a service. I didn't know that I can call it this way. We exposed DynamoDB directly with API gateway to the front end, for instance. So there was absolutely nothing in the backend. We could access the DynamoDB from the front end. You can absolutely do this. You can have HTTP, you can have API gateway, which accesses DynamoDB, and you have nothing. So I would say then it is a backend. Okay. So I was already in a backend as a service project. I didn't know that it is called that way. What I know that what Cloudflare is doing, they have functions on the edge and stuff like that. But you are asking me whether it is how you would like to compete with Cloudflare. This is not a good idea. If you maybe it's a good idea to expose DynamoDB directly to the front ends if it works for you, because then you don't have to pay for the backend logic, right? What if I'm using JDBC plus JDBI to access database? Where should I place them? You should place them to in control package. Yeah, Firebase or Pocketbase. Okay, this got it. Okay, I think. So what about REST clients? So REST clients control, and now it depends. If the card in the REST client is a I would say important object, I would put it to an entity package. If this is like just a response or request, I would use a Java record, and sometimes even you can declare the Java record within the interface of the client. So it doesn't have to be a separate file. It can be actually on top of the method. You can declare Java record. So helper parameters I will put in control. A true entities I will put in entity package. I hope this is completely covered. If not, chat, right? Be active. Okay, someone asked me, what is secure random? And the answer is they are algorithms which are considered to be secure. Whether they are secure or not, I don't care a lot, because usually I have to develop applications, and usually my clients tell me which algorithms we have to pick. If this is regulated, then we pick whatever we have to pick. And if it's not regulated, then I read the Java doc and pick the algorithm which is more likely, to work. So secure random means this is that the random generator generates an unpredictable random numbers. And the algorithms are swappable, and JDK supports multiple algorithms. And the question came from my YouTube channel, from my daily shorts, but I said, okay, I would like to answer the question here, because it's almost impossible to answer the question within 60 seconds. I mean, this is hard. So therefore, I would say secure random is called secure because behind the scenes a cryptographic algorithm works for us, which generates good enough random numbers. So now, Huao asked me, so response and request would be on the control, and only the domain object itself would be an entity. Perfect. But the response and request could be also entities, but the entities are not, how to call it. So what could happen is, imagine your REST client calls another service, and you get entity objects back which belong actually to the other systems and are not compatible with your point of view. You could get an invoice from an external service which has nothing to do with your invoice. In this particular case, I will put the request and response object to the control package, because usually if you call something out are not your domain classes. These domain classes belong to the other system. So this will be my differentiation. If this is, I don't know, sometimes they're just pointless strings or whatever, right? So I would just make them nicer and put them in control. But if you are getting objects which are domain objects and important to you, then put them in the entity package. I hope we agree. If not, just ask in the chat. So Mr. Daniel Vamara, I think Daniel, right? Because he already attended, Daniel, exactly, the workshops on Airport Munich. So thank you for that. And he is working on government project, and he is always watching but never writing. So Daniel, at least you have to say hello, right? Next time. And he's asking me what to pick. So I would pick right now Elastic. Why? There was some Elastic problems with the license. But if you say Elastic license, to my knowledge, the creator of Elastic said, sorry, and we are open source again. So the Elastic was, I think, wait a second, I wanted actually to check that. Elastic license change, but regardless, yeah, exactly. This was what I remember. In September 2024, the issue is resolved. Elastic is open source again, and to my knowledge, the creator of Elastic regretted the decision that the software was changed in 2021, 3 years ago. And what happens is that at the same time, AWS, Amazon created OpenSearch, and now I think OpenSearch CNCF became an CNCF project, or okay, both are grouped in CNCF. So this is maybe not a project, but they applied to be a CNCF project. But OpenSearch is compatible with Elastic. So we have now two Elastic projects, and Elastic was always, I would say, a standard or leader, well known in the Java community. And Elastic also supports a vector database. So you can use Elastic as a vector database and as a NoSQL database, and is available in the cloud. So Daniel, I think Elk. I would pick Elk for that reasons, because it's more. So Greylog is lesser known, and Elk, I would say you find the most examples, is most standardized solution, and this LGTM stands for Loki for logs, Grafana for visualization, Tempo for traces, and Mimir for metrics. So yeah, I always have to look it up. So Elk. I would pick Elk, Daniel. Then Mr. How? Ask me again. I see you expose JPA entity on the boundary layer sometimes, and more often is JSON objects. And now ask me now, is it the best if you need to do some bin validation on those objects to return 400? I mean, yes, because 400 is a bad request, and this is what I don't understand. If you get 400, what you can do is you can return your own body then with additional information. This is sometimes best practice, and sometimes it's the worst practice for security reasons, right? So in an internal project, it's a good idea to return 400 and what went wrong, but sometimes you must not do this because it can be misused the information. But both is a good idea. Either you just return 400, or you can return 400 and you can return in body the additional information. So and you don't have to create an object. You can use a multi-line string. For instance, you have to only be careful with JSON injection, but a multi-line string or JSON-P. JSON API for what's it called? API for JSON processing is called JSON-P. So you could have a JPA entity class with one method validate, and this method can throw bad request exception. You can say this is ugly like hell, because why JPA should know about web? But I say if these are web applications and this is the only, the only API you have, why not? I mean, why we should decouple if we are already coupled, right? So I would say you could start with it, so that the validate method on entities throws bad request exception, which inherits from web application exception. Then you don't have to map anything. It will just work out of the box. The only problem is in unit tests, you will need the web application in the class path. Otherwise, it won't work. But you can start with it. And if you say, now I need decoupling, you can still swap the bad request application exception with wow. A bad request application exception which belongs to you, and then you are completely decoupled. What you could also do, I also did it recently, the validate method could return an interface which is implemented by Java records, and the Java records can carry additional information. And if you are curious, take a look at data-oriented programming with Java. This is exactly what's about. So you can get the instance of the interface back, and the receiver of the interface can use an instance of or switch statement and automatically deconstruct the exactly, my eBank. I did this in the eBank. So this is just an example, a little bit exaggerated how. I wanted to say, I implement an example, and this is exactly the example. It's called eBank. And don't take it too seriously, the eBank stuff, but you can create an issue and ask me that as well, and I will try to fix it or whatever. Funny story. There was an Java user group meeting in Vienna with 2 talks. One was LLM. They asked me to deliver 2 talks. Can I do this? Of course. And the idea was, the first talk was LLM, then was a pizza break, and then was system testing talk. And I planned to walk through the eBank example. And what happened is, I got so many questions in the LLM talk that we spent the first slot, then the pizza break, plus the system test slot, just to discuss LLMs, and I showed them some code. And I only spent 5 minutes without any slides to explain the idea of system testing with the eBank example. And I think I broke my own record. And this was the shortest ever talk at Java user group, I think. So this is the entire. So see what happens here. One more thing. Understand, you would create, what is this? One thing I didn't understand is you would create a nested record inside the interface of the REST client itself. Yes. I didn't actually always had not nested. I mean nested within the interface, but it's not like record of records. It's a record inside an interface. Why not? You can do this. I'd always do this on top of the method, and if it grows, you can always move it out. So what I do at the beginning, I always my Java records, mostly I create them on the method, and then I move them out. So it's the fastest way. And whether it remains there or not, it depends, on how it looks like a little bit, right? So there's a little bit. It has to be readable, and it has to be simple to read, and the team should like it. Just try it. Entity. As in model classes, I'm familiar with that in concerning Spring. Model classes, entity. So, model classes, no idea what model classes are. This is model view controller. There is model view controller, and this is the boundary control entity. The boundary control entity is maybe the oldest pattern ever. Is independent from Java. Was created at Ericsson, and was supported by all tools, modeling tools, still supported by Droyo and all UML tools. And this is why I say, okay, if there's a standard, I just pick it. And I think this is the only standard I know which is cross language, and we use the BCE for frontend and for backend. And why I also am using, because developers like it. So if you take a look, we get still, the entire community uses the BCE, and it's very simple. So what it means is, the most important thing in BCE is that the packages have domain meaning. So you need a nice name, and every domain package has at most 3 packages: boundary, control, entity. There are no nested packages, nothing. So this is basically it. And boundary is the perimeter layer or API. Then is the boundary. And then we have boundary. Then we have control is optional reusable functions. And entity are the data or the domain objects. This is explained. So Java Records implements something, let's say in this particular case, validation result. So Java Record implements validation result, and this would be not Java Record implements validation result. It would be like success implements validation result, and a failure implements validation result. And the receiver only knows validation result, and then you can have pattern matching and in the switch statement, and you can, for instance, because usually if validation failure can have more information than the success, right? Okay, so what I forgot, not you, is airhacks 29, airhacks TV. 29th. Wow. Okay, this was cool. And we need where are the questions? Super cool. Okay. Time machine. I forgot the time machine. Okay. Semi-Java 8 news back then. Seems like 8 years ago. There were lots of discussion. Java is dead because Oracle didn't work on Java E anymore. What we know right now is that Oracle back then worked on the Helidon project. This is why Java E didn't move forward. So serving files without a war, forgot what's all about, but wars is still a thing, I would say, in application servers. And now what's changed? We have jars. So software quality with Sonar and Java E, defaults and okay. This is still a thing. What right now I perform code reviews, and lots of projects are using no args constructor Lombok annotation to generate pointless default constructors just to make Sonar happy. And I've asked the project, why are you generating so lots of code? Yes, otherwise they get Sonar warnings. So it seems after 8 years, companies still didn't manage to configure Sonar properly. This is actually the sad story. So the default rules of Sonar are still dictating the structure of Java classes, and no one questions that. That's the interesting part. They're just okay if this Sonar. No, what I also see is still pointless unit tests. Every class is tested, which is absolutely even. I saw the boundary classes. Usually, for instance, JAX-RS resources don't have any logic. They are still tested. Accessing EJBs from entity listener is lesser thing, but you could do with CDI. Still, there is a CDI helper method. Wow, someone run server smoke on 141 processors and 10 terabytes. So this what we have forgot what actually happened there, but sounds interesting. It was not me. There was a listener of the show. Cross jars alternatives. So what I suspect, what the question was, there's one jar with the core logic, and then the other jars were the alternatives. And what alternatives are, you can have one interface with multiple implementation, and then in the configuration you can say left or right. I would say cross jars right now, I usually have just one jar. So, and this jar is bigger and bigger. Referencing entity manager from JPA entities. This was back then or back then in some projects back then I used that. They were like highly object-oriented projects. JAX-RS exception mappers. This is a funny thing. What I see a lot right now, there is a server exception mapper from Quarkus in REST Easy, and this is used a lot in projects. We just say, okay, why you are doing this? Because exception mappers is just JAX-RS, and I like really Quarkus, but there is no need to be depending, on the internal implementation of Quarkus. Always dangerous. On that note, at the very beginning of WebLogic 8, it was on the beginning, I don't know, maybe 2003. Per accident in a project they use, I remember, file services from WebLogic, and this was discontinued in WebLogic. Maybe it was WebLogic 7 to 8, and then they say, okay, why are you using internal server APIs? Why are you not relying on the public APIs? And the project had to migrate to the official API. Entity manager, what I suspect is whether the entity manager is serializable, because back then the EJBs could be stateful session beans, and the question was always what happens if the bean is serialized, so it's pointless right now. Yeah, so I would say if you take a look, when was it? It was 8 years ago. It was January of 2016, so almost nine years ago, right? 8 or 9. Still, up-to-date questions. Okay, so we even covered, I look old here, right? 9 years ago. Crazy. So, let's see what we have here. Stefan, hey. Let's see. The very last question is... Mr. Zakaria asked about LangGraph, and the LangGraph is an interesting part. So LangGraph is indeed he asked me, to invite Bartolomeo to my podcast, which I will do. And LangGraphs looks actually nice. It is like LangChain4J in a graph-like structure. So I would like to take a look at the source code here, but it is vibrant project, and Mr. Bartolomeo Sorrentino looks actually legit, and I will invite him for sure to my podcast. The problem of my podcast is I have, for instance, the ChatGPT, right? The recent ChatGPT podcast was recorded in May. So I have so many guests, so many requests that I really like to record, but I only publish once a week. So the queue is over. It is more than full. This is the problem, right? So I could stop recording and the podcast will still go. So they have to be a little bit careful. And on top of that, what's funny is I get emails and requests from everywhere, from marketing companies, and they always go like this. You have for sure no problem to find the right guests. We suggest you this manager and topic which I don't understand what they are talking about. And the funniest thing is they are assuming that I have problem to get guests, and I have the opposite problem. I like to record the shows, and there are not enough weeks in a year to publish everything. So, but I will try to invite Mr. Bartolomeo and to talk about LangGraph4J, because it sounds interesting and it is important. Because also Microsoft is also working on graph LLMs, and I think we covered everything. One of the best episodes of 2024, I would say. Lots of questions up front, which are brilliant, because I can prepare a bit. For instance, there would be no way that I could watch during the show the Steve Jobs Java story, which is incredible, as a really two brilliant videos. And what I really stunned, the technology from back then, how advanced it was. I would say it looks not as nice, but I would say right now would be also problematic to implement, the same tech they had back then. what Steve Jobs showed on stage was flight bookings and a car dealership, I would say, with filtering and detail views. It was a master detail and filtering, so it was incredible. Okay, so if you like, I forgot something important. So first, of course, this is the minor thing, because the workshops are almost full. I think I have at most 3 seats for each workshop free, and then I would like to close the registrations. Otherwise, there are too many people. So both, and I also opened per request the Eventbrite page. Does it work? Hopefully. Yeah, it works. There should be 2 upcoming events, both events, and you can register a meetup, Eventbrite, and directly. And tomorrow I will JavaConf. I think this is conf, pronounced correctly, JavaConf. And I will talk about LLMs. I can tell you already, it won't work because this is on-site. Last year's I attended online, and now they invited me on-site. So I'm already looking forward to see this. And the interesting part is my first LLM talk in Vienna was like 3 hours. The next talk was better, was 2 hours, and I supposed to speak there for 45 minutes, I think. So I'm interested in what happens. And I was also DevOps. I forgot about that. It's also LLM talk at DevOps. But my talks are always different. There is one title, but the content is always completely different. And also funny note, in Vienna, at the Java User Group Vienna, after 3 hours talking, someone came to me and asked me how you actually prepared, for the talk, that you can actually speak for 3 hours. And I say, I was actually supposed to speak for 45 minutes. So obviously I'm not prepared at all. I just reacted to questions and we have a nice time, So this was actually brilliant. So I would say thank you and see you in 2025 with the 130th edition of airhacks TV. Thank you for attending. It's a great community, and I really enjoyed, I have to say. Always looking forward to the first Monday of the month. And yeah, this was short delay, but I had to attend the reInvent show, which was impressive and reminded me of early Java ones. Was a very similar story. So have a great time and see you next year. Okay, bye.